Hi everyone, welcome back. Welcome to the third session of this morning. So very pleased to announce that we've got Matthew and Richard from Esri's UK research team going to give us a talk on Esri's location services using that with Leaflet and Cesium. So, hand over to you guys.
Thank you, Matt. So, as Matt said, I'm Matthew, this is Richard, and we're here from Esri UK to talk to you about our location services. So there's been some very imaginative titles, this isn't one of them. So we're going to be looking at integrating our location services with Leaflet and Cesium, just as kind of examples of integrating Esri stuff with open source stuff. And because we're from Edinburgh, we're big fans of hiking, so we thought we'd make it a bit fun with a couple of example apps that you could use to plan a Highland day hike. So to start off, we're going to look at some app requirements. So what do we want our kind of apps to do? So when Richard and I go for a hike, we like to make sure there's a few things. So firstly, there's a very unhealthy looking lunch there, but that's actually a vegan roast, so it's okay. So we like to make sure there's lunch available. We like trains, so we want to make sure we can either kind of get most of the way or some of the way to our hike via a train. It doesn't have to be the Jacobite, but that would be nice. We're big baggers of kind of Munros and Corbetts. I don't know how familiar you all are with kind of the Scottish hiking tradition, but it's a big thing to bag some Munros. So these are the tallest peaks you would get in the Highlands. And we don't mind if there's a bit of rain. I think that's to be expected, but we just want to make sure we're being safe and responsible when we're out hiking. So we'll want to know what the weather's doing, especially if it's looking a bit dangerous. And one thing particularly I don't like is too much scrambling or exposure. So I'm going to want to make sure I know what the gradients are, and I'm going to want to have a bit of situational awareness about whether there's any steep drops on ridges and stuff like that. So some of the tools I'm going to be using here, or we're going to be using in our little demos, you're probably familiar with Leaflet. So this is a lightweight 2D mapping library for JavaScript. And then we're also going to be using Cesium. So this is a platform for developing 3D apps, and we're going to be using the JavaScript version of this. And then I'm going to hand over to Richard, who's going to talk about the ArcGIS stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. So we've got a couple of really good tools that we want to use, as you've seen. But as you all know, it's one thing to have tooling, it's another thing to have content and data to put in them. So that's where we're going to call upon what we call the ArcGIS Location Platform. This is a platform of, as you might have guessed it, location and data services. So everything from base mapping to data hosting, data enrichment, geocoding, place finding, routing, all of these kind of things that you would expect. The really cool thing about this is that you don't need to be using anything else Esri to get involved with it. So as a developer particularly, you can use ArcGIS Location Platform, get all of the services, and then plug them into pretty much whatever you want, which is why we're going to be using Leaflet and Cesium. As well as that, it's free to access. You can sign up and get started straight away. You don't need to put a credit card in or anything like that. And it's a pay-as-you-go model with a free tier of usage. So I will put like a QR code up at the end in case you want to have check it out. So that's Location Platform in a nutshell, but the best way to explain what it does is to see it in action. So we're going to start building out our 2D app in Leaflet first of all, and we're going to start with a base map. So there are a whole ton of different base maps available in the location platform. You've got everything from kind of topographic maps to really clean, just background mapping, as well as things like satellite imagery. So everything except for the imagery is vector-based, so you can style it however you want, and there's also built-in styles that you can use. There's even some kind of like artistic ones as well, so you can have fun. And then obviously the imagery is raster based as well. In our leaflet example, it's just a couple of lines of code to get our base maps in that hopefully you can just about see at the top there. So we literally just say which base map we want to use, and we include a token. The token is an API key, and that's going to be consistent across all the different services that we show you over the next few minutes. So I won't keep saying that we'll put a token in, but there you go. Access token needs to go in. And then we just add it to the map in Leaflet, and we've got our base map ready to go. So now we have our base map. We want to put some walking routes in there. There's obviously a lot of different ways we could do this, but in this case, we started off with some GPX files from a guy called Stephen Fallon. He's a bit of a legend in the Highland walking community. I think he holds the record for the most times he's bagged all of the Munros. What is it like?
He's been around them almost 17 times, so that's 17 times 282. Yeah. So
pretty good effort.
He's not a young man, but...
So as you might imagine, his data is really good, so he kindly let us use it for this demo. But what we wanted to do is take those GPX files and host them in Location Platform. So a big part of Location Platform is data hosting. Once we have our data in Location Platform, it turns it into a kind of dynamic service that you can get to via a REST endpoint. The nice thing about that is that you can go in and edit it, you delete, add new routes, change attribution, whatever you want to do, and it will just automatically pull through into your app because it's getting it dynamically every time. You can also output that data hosting in open formats to use it in a variety of different places, as well as Esri's SDKs if you want to do that. These services also auto-scale to meet demand, so if your app suddenly gets really popular, you don't need to worry about scaling, well, any of these service parts, but the data hosting included. It will scale as much as you need it to. And as well as being compatible with a bunch of open source tools, we've also fully documented how you would use them with them, so you're not on your own. Having said that, you can always go down to the lowest level, which is a REST endpoint, and then obviously that's the most flexible if you want to do a bit more niche stuff with it. And then, yeah, there's also tools for simple data management. So it makes the whole thing of data management in your app much easier, I think. OK, and this is what our routes look like. So I've popped them into our leaflet map. As you might expect, you can symbolize it pretty much however you want. That's standard leaflet stuff. So in this case, I've symbolized it on the number of peaks per route. So the thicker lines are more peaks on a single walk, and the thinner lines are less peaks. So I don't know, I think it just looked kind of cool as a quick way to visualize how intense these walks are going to be. Code-wise, it's really simple again. Similar to the base maps, we give it a URL of where our data is hosted. So that's a unique URL for every service that you upload. And basically include it in the map and start working on the symbology that you want to do. So yeah, that's the routes in. We also mentioned in our things we wanted our app to do that we wanted to be able to search for locations. So ArcGIS Location Platform has geocoding functionality. We'll just use the single geocode, nice and simple, but there's also batch, reverse, and a few other bits and pieces in there. Another cool thing is that it does auto-suggestions as you start to type. I think this one is actually a video. Let me just, there we go. So in Leaflet specifically, there's actually a widget that you can use to get geocoding in really quickly. That's what you can see in this video. And you can also do it manually as well. But it supports towns, cities, so going through a kind of progressively smaller settlements through here. But it also will work with things like mountains, points of interest, national parks, things like that. And as you can see, it's nice and quick. Railway stations as well. Trains, always remember trains. Right, so we've got our search functionality in. We also mentioned that we wanted to do transport and lunch. So as you saw, the geocoder can do some transport locations, but we also have a places service for points of interest, which is much more detailed than just geocoding. So again, we've got a little video here. I've made this really simple. There's a panel on the left-hand side and we can drop down different types of points of interest that we want to search for. So we've got everything from kind of like commercial, shopping, transport, landmarks, or you can just search against all of them at once if you wanted to. And in this example, I've just done a simple click on the map to say where we are, and it will do a buffer and use that as a search radius. If I had a bit more time, I'd probably do the start and end location of the routes so that we could see how close lunch stops are and so forth. But this brings back points of interest, and as well as that, it has things like the website, the address, and a few other bits of information there. So yeah, that's going to cover off our lunch stop and being able to get to the beginning of our hike. So it looks like we're aiming for Fort William.
Thank you, Richard. So Richard's shown us a bit more about the kind of the transport and the lunch stops, but to get an idea of what some of the conditions will be like on the ground, we're going to insert a touch of realism and head into Cesium. So being quite a, I suppose, a Z-intensive activity, I think it's nice that we can view some of these hiking routes in 3D with a bit of imagery. So I think this is a video as well. So Richard showed us how to some of the base maps we've got available. So this is the just the imagery base map, and on top of that, I've just added the hiking routes from the same service that Richard showed us. So this is the code for doing that in Cesium. So it's basically just a query to that routes service where you can kind of bring back a subset, or in this case, I'm just bringing back everything and clamping it to the ground. And I think that looks like quite an intense one with a few Munros, so I think we'll be avoiding that one. But we've got the terrain here at the moment. This is just the Cesium terrain, but I want a bit more kind of, I want to access some of the specific data around elevation. So for this, we're going to hook into the Location Platform's elevation service. So again, we're just hitting the API there as the URL, sending it an X and a Y, and it will bring back the Z. So that we can do that for either points, or in this case, we can do it for lines. So here I'm kind of clicking on the routes, it's heading off to that service and bringing back some elevation values for that route. And then you can see it's quite small, but I'm doing some other calculations on top of that, like getting the max elevation, the elevation gain, and some of the gradients. So that's a look at the elevation, but I want to, remember at the start, look at some weather, see what the weather conditions are like. So with access to, with a kind of location platform account, you get access to the ArcGIS Living Atlas, which is a collection of kind of curated and authoritative data sets from a range of organizations. We're moving through quite quickly here, but there was some from the RNLI, I think the European Space Agency, National Trust, but because we're looking at weather, we've fortunately got some data from the Met Office. Cool. So as I said at the start, we don't mind if it's a little bit wet. I think that's to be expected, but it's best to kind of avoid some dangerous weather. So for this, we can hook into the Met Office's National Severe Weather Warning service. So again, we can access this like we were accessing our routes data, just performing a query against that URL. So for this, it's the Weather Warning Service URL. And I did take that screenshot, and it doesn't really kind of reflect the sort of weather you would find in Scotland, with it all being quite windy in England and relatively nice in Scotland. But the kind of good thing about this is that it's updating automatically. So if you're hooked into that service, it will automatically update for your app. And there's lots of attribution we can grab for that. I've just clumsily chucked it all in a pop-up there. And if we want a little bit more kind of fine-grained insight into, that's a video that I want to play. Fine-grained insight into some of the weather conditions. We can also access something like the annual count of rainfall days, which I think reflects a little bit more the kind of conditions you would find. So I think we're looking around Loch Lomond here with 133 rainy days per year. So you can probably, you shouldn't be disappointed if you're getting wet on a day like that. So that's it for kind of the additional data we can add. I think I'm just handing over to Richard now for a little bit of a wrap up.
Yep, thank you, Matthew. So hopefully what we've shown here through the example of planning a Highland walk is that we've taken the same services and applied them to two different use cases using two different tools, and hopefully that's starting to show you the flexibility of what we can achieve with Location Platform. In terms of just summarizing what Location Platform is and how you might want to get started if you do, as we said, it's a bunch of location services for data and spatial capability. You can see them listed here, hopefully, just about. And they're free to get going, pay as you go with a free tier of usage, as you'd expect. If you do want to have a look at it, scan the QR code on screen. You can go ahead and try it out at no cost. And if you like it, then continue. And if you don't, then don't, obviously. But yeah, I hope that was a useful talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Very interesting, thanks. We've got time, 5 minutes for any questions. I'm going to sit down this time and let the guys take those questions. But yeah, thank you very much.
Say a little bit more about how you get data from Arc onto Leaflet. Can you do that with like anything that's used the kind of web ArcGIS platform if you've got the key?
Yeah. So, sorry, what do you mean by the Arc web platform? Do you mean ArcGIS Online? Or?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So the question was tell a little bit more about using Leaflet with Esri services, including if you were using ArcGIS Online. So with Location Platform that we've been speaking about uses very much the same services as ArcGIS Online does. The difference is the mechanism that you access them by. So it's quite consistent. Everything that we showed here you could also do with your ArcGIS Online services as well if you already have them. The purpose of the Location Platform is removing the need to have any other Esri stuff to give people more options depending how they want to use it. Does that answer the question?
I think so, yeah, because we're working with somebody who's using ArcGIS Online.
Okay.
Kind of like, oh, can we get data from that map into Leaflet?
Yeah, absolutely. To make your life easier, there's also a little open source library that Esri make called Esri Leaflet, which just makes some of the integration a bit easier as well. Cool, thank you. Any other questions? Yep.
I know you're using Cesium ion for the Cesium side of things. Is it still possible to use Cesium JS, the more open source side of Cesium?
You didn't?
That example was with Cesium JS.
But it had Cesium ion at the bottom of the screen.
I mean, I'm not overly familiar with Cesium, but Cesium ion, what does that involve? Sorry.
It's more of the closed. You pay to have them host the data for you, provide the data in. Whereas Cesium JS, you can use your own data stream and your own data into the platform and openly use the data for your own applications.
Oh, okay. I don't know if it perhaps was using Cesium ion for some of the terrain data, but I didn't sign up for anything to kind of access that library.
I suspect you can, but if have a chat afterwards, we'll check for you. Thank you. Any other? Yeah.
As far as the data hosting, what are kind of the formats it can hold? Is it just kind of file storage, or is it something on par with database storage as well?
Yeah, so the question's around the formats and for data storage in Location Platform. So you can The source data can be various different formats, but once you get it into Location Platform, it's stored as a feature service, which is a Esri format. You can use it for just like vector data, points, lines, polygons. There's also storage for tiles and imagery and bits and pieces like that as well. So it'll depend what type of data you're storing as to its kind of capabilities, as you'd imagine. And then in terms of using it, you can either use it from just directly from the service as the REST endpoint. You can also export it in various different open formats if you'd rather do that. So it's quite flexible. I think if you've got specific workflows in mind, then let's have a chat afterwards and see.
We've got time for one more question if there is one. In that case, I'll go.
Yep.
So you loaded in the GPX data initially. That particular data is probably pretty static, so it's reference data. If you had data that was more dynamic, how would you go about updating that within the platform?
It would depend on exactly the data. So because the data storage and Location Platform is dynamic, you could use something like a Python script to every time there's an update or every day on a schedule to pull those updates through. There's various different ways you could do it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.